When Gabriel, the ruthless head of Chicago's most feared syndicate, saw his brilliant plus-size secretary limp into the office, his blood ran cold. She claimed she fell. He knew a bruise when he saw one. That very night, her abusive fiancé packed his bags and was never seen again. The chilling October wind, sweeping off Lake Michigan, was nothing compared to the ice in Penelope Russo's veins as she stared at her reflection in the lobby doors of DeLuca Enterprises. At 250 pounds, Penelope, penny to the few people who actually bothered to look past her size, was used to taking up space. But this morning, all she wanted to do was disappear. She adjusted the thick, opaque black tights that dug uncomfortably into her waist, her hands trembling as she smoothed down her charcoal pencil skirt. Every slight movement sent a searing, white-hot flash of agony up her left leg. "You're pathetic. You know that. A clumsy, fat cow." Bradley's voice echoed in her head, as sharp and biting as the Chicago cold. Last night hadn't been their worst fight, but it had been the most physically damaging. Bradley Jenkins, her fiancé of 3 years, had flown into a rage over a misplaced electric bill. When Penny tried to walk away, he had grabbed her shoulder and shoved her hard. She had gone down, her shin and thigh colliding violently with the sharp oak edge of their heavy coffee table. She had stayed on the floor for an hour, weeping silently into the rug, while Bradley turned up the television volume to drown her out. Now, stepping into the sleek, marble-floored high-rise on Wacker Drive, Penny forced her spine straight. She was the executive assistant to Gabriel DeLuca, CEO of a global logistics firm that everyone in the city whispered was merely a legitimate front for the most powerful organized crime family in the Midwest. In Gabriel's office, weakness was not tolerated. Penny swiped her badge and made her way to the private elevator. Despite her heavy frame, she usually moved with a quiet, efficient grace. Today, however, her gait was fractured, a heavy, dragging limp that she couldn't disguise, no matter how hard she bit the inside of her cheek. The penthouse level was dead silent, save for the hum of high-end ventilation and the faint ticking of a grandfather clock in the reception area. Penny dropped her purse at her desk, powered on her dual monitors, and immediately went to the private kitchenette to brew Gabriel's espresso. Black, no sugar, imported beans from a private estate in Sicily. At exactly 8 a.m., the heavy mahogany doors to the executive suite opened. Gabriel DeLuca walked in. He was a terrifyingly handsome man, tall and broad-shouldered, draped in a custom navy Brioni suit that cost more than Penny's annual rent. His dark hair was swept back, and his piercing hazel eyes missed absolutely nothing. He was a man who traded in secrets, leverage, and when necessary, blood. "Good morning, Mr. DeLuca," Penny said, her voice steady as she carried the porcelain cup and saucer toward his desk. "Morning, Penelope," Gabriel murmured, his eyes fixed on the tablet in his hand. He didn't look up as she approached. As Penny stepped onto the plush Persian rug in the center of his office, her left knee buckled. The pain spiked so sharply that she let out a sharp gasp, her weight shifting violently. She managed to catch herself, keeping the espresso from spilling, but the damage was done. Gabriel's head snapped up. His eyes, usually cool and detached, locked onto her. He set the tablet down slowly. "Put the cup down," Gabriel ordered, his baritone voice dangerously soft. "I'm sorry, sir. I just lost my footing for a... Put the cup on the desk, Penelope. Now." Penny obeyed, her hands shaking slightly as the porcelain clinked against the glass tabletop. She took a step back, instinctively trying to hide her left leg behind her right. It was a futile gesture under his intense scrutiny. Gabriel stood up, towering over her. He walked around the massive desk, his gaze dropping to her legs, then traveling back up to her face. Penny felt a flush creep up her cheeks. She was deeply insecure about her body on a good day. Acutely aware that she didn't fit the mold of a billionaire's secretary. Bradley reminded her of that daily, but Gabriel had never looked at her with disgust. He looked at her now with something akin to cold fury. "Walk to the door," Gabriel commanded. "Mr. DeLuca, I have a mountain of offshore manifests to—" "Walk to the door, Penelope." Swallowing hard, Penny turned and took 3 steps toward the heavy double doors. The limp was undeniable. She practically dragged her left foot, her heavy thighs brushing together, her shoulders tensed in agony. "Stop," Gabriel said. She froze. He closed the distance between them, his voice dropping to a low rumble that vibrated in her chest. "Who did it?" "Nobody," Penny lied instantly, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I was clumsy. I tripped on the stairs at the L station on my way home yesterday. You know me, sir, always tripping over my own feet." It was the excuse she always used, the excuse Bradley told her to use. Gabriel reached out, his large, warm fingers gently catching her chin and tilting her face up to meet his eyes. The contact sent a shock wave through her system. "Do not lie to me. I know the difference between a stumble on concrete and a localized blunt force trauma. You're favoring your left leg entirely, meaning the strike was deliberate." "Mr. DeLuca, please," Penny whispered, tears pricking the corners of her eyes. "It's nothing. I'm fine to work." Gabriel stared at her for a long, agonizing moment. His thumb lightly brushed against her jawline before he dropped his hand. "Go back to your desk, cancel my 10 o'clock with the union reps, and tell Victor I want to see him immediately." Penny nodded, rushing out of the office as fast as her injured leg would carry her. Once the door clicked shut, Gabriel picked up his phone, his knuckles turning white. "Victor," Gabriel said when his head of security answered. "My secretary is injured. I want to know everything about her life outside this building, her commute, her neighbors, and specifically the man she lives with. I want it on my desk in an hour." By 6 p.m., the rest of the executive floor had emptied out, leaving only the soft glow of the city lights pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Penny sat at her desk, exhaustion pulling at her bones. Her leg was throbbing with a dull, rhythmic ache, and she was dreading going home. Bradley had texted her twice, once to tell her she was a lazy pig for not leaving dinner in the slow cooker, and once to demand she pick up his dry cleaning. The intercom on her desk buzzed. "Penelope, come in here." Penny sighed, gathered her notepad, and limped into Gabriel's office. He was seated at a smaller, intimate glass table in the corner of the room, rather than his imposing desk. Spread across the table was a feast from Monteverde, one of the most exclusive Italian restaurants in the West Loop. There was handmade burrata, truffle tortellini, braised short ribs, and thick slices of focaccia. "Sit," Gabriel said, pulling out a chair for her. "Sir, I can't. I need to get home. Bradley is waiting for—" "Bradley can wait," Gabriel interrupted, his tone leaving absolutely no room for argument. "You've worked a 10-hour day on a bad leg. You are going to sit down, and you are going to eat." Penny stood frozen. No one had ever prepared food for her like this. Bradley heavily monitored what she ate, constantly shaming her for her appetite, forcing her to eat plain salads while he devoured takeout in front of her. The smell of the truffles and rich tomato sauce made her mouth water, but shame held her back. "I shouldn't," she mumbled, looking down at her sensible, wide-width flats. "I'm on a strict diet." Bradley says I need to lose 50 pounds before the wedding, or the photos will be ruined. A dark shadow crossed Gabriel's face. He stood, stepping close to her. He was close enough that she could smell his cologne, sandalwood and expensive scotch. Look at me, Penelope. She tentatively raised her eyes. Your mind is the sharpest in this entire corporation. You keep my empire running. And your body. Gabriel paused, his eyes doing a slow, deliberate sweep over her soft, heavy curves, lingering on the swell of her hips and her full bust. Your body is exactly as it should be. The man waiting for you at home is a fool who is starved of taste. Now sit down and eat with me. Overwhelmed by his words, a tear slipped down Penny's cheek. She sat down. Gabriel plated her food himself, giving her generous portions of the rich tortellini and short rib. He watched her take her first bite, a flicker of satisfaction lighting up his dark eyes as she closed hers in pure bliss at the taste. For the first time in years, she ate without guilt. She ate until she was comfortably full, laughing softly at a rare, dry joke Gabriel made about the mare. But as she shifted to reach for her water glass, her knee struck the metal table leg. Penny cried out, dropping her fork as blinding pain radiated from her shin. She curled in on herself, gripping her thigh. In a fraction of a second, Gabriel was out of his chair and kneeling on the floor beside her. Don't, Penny panicked, trying to push her chair back. Mr. DeLuca, I'm fine, please. Daul, quiet, he ordered gently. Without asking permission, Gabriel reached for the hem of her pencil skirt and pulled it up just enough to expose her knee. His large hands grasped the thick nylon of her tights. Before she could protest, he hooked his fingers under the fabric and rolled it down her calf. Gabriel inhaled sharply. Taking up the entirety of Penny's shin and spreading up to her knee was a grotesque, swollen bruise. It was a violent canvas of deep purple, black, and sickly yellow. In the center was a small, raw laceration where the skin had split against the table edge. Gabriel's fingers hovered over the bruised flesh, trembling with a barely contained violent rage. He traced the outer edge of the swelling, his touch so shockingly tender that Penny let out a shuddering breath. He pushed you, Gabriel stated. It wasn't a question. Victor had delivered the file at noon. Gabriel knew everything. He knew about Bradley Jenkins, a pathetic, mid-level insurance adjuster with a crippling online gambling addiction. He knew Bradley had drained Penny's savings account last month. He knew the neighbors in their Rogers Park apartment building frequently called the cops due to the screaming. It was an accident, Penny sobbed, the dam finally breaking. She covered her face with her hands, humiliated that her powerful, flawless boss was kneeling at her fat, bruised legs. He was just stressed about money. I got in his way. I'm so clumsy. Stop defending the man who is breaking you, Gabriel said, his voice a dangerous, quiet rasp. He reached up, pulling her hands away from her face, forcing her to look at him. The mask of the corporate CEO was gone. Staring back at Penny was the Don of the DeLuca family, a predator who protected what belonged to him. And in Gabriel's mind, Penny had just become his absolute priority. He won't touch you again, Penelope. Do you understand me? Never again. Panic seized her chest. No, Mr. DeLuca, please. You don't know him. If he finds out I told you, if he thinks I complained, he'll kill me. Please just let it go. Gabriel stood up slowly, his expression smoothing over into a mask of terrifying calm. I am sending you home in my private SUV. Marco will drive you. He is one of my personal guards. You will pack a bag. Marco will wait at the door. If Bradley is there, Marco will handle him while you pack. Then you will be taken to a suite at the Drake Hotel under my name. I can't just leave him. You already have, Gabriel said softly, pressing a heavy hand to her shoulder. Go with Marco. I have some business to attend to tonight. 45 minutes later, Penny was trembling in the back of Gabriel's armored Cadillac Escalade as it pulled up to her apartment building in Rogers Park. Marco, a hulking man with a scarred eyebrow, escorted her to her door, But when Penny turned the key and walked in, the apartment was completely empty. Bradley wasn't there. His car wasn't in the lot. A half-eaten sandwich sat on the kitchen counter. The television was paused on a sports channel, and his jacket was missing. Across town, in a deserted, dimly lit parking garage under Navy Pier, Bradley Jenkins was thrown violently against the concrete pillar by two men in dark suits. He coughed up blood, his eyes wide with absolute terror as he stared at the man, stepping out of the shadows. Gabriel DeLuca unbuttoned his suit jacket, casually rolling up the cuffs of his pristine white shirt. The cold wind howled through the concrete structure, carrying the promise of violence. "Mr. Jenkins," Gabriel said, his voice echoing in the empty garage. He pulled a pair of black leather gloves from his pocket and began to pull them on, finger by finger. "We need to have a conversation about how you treat my secretary." The concrete pillars of the subterranean parking garage beneath Navy Pier felt like ice against Bradley Jenkins' back. He gasped for air, tasting copper and exhaust fumes, as two of Gabriel DeLuca's largest enforcers, men introduced only as Tommy and Dante, held him firmly in place. The wind howling off Lake Michigan echoed through the cavernous, empty structure, but it was the chilling silence of the billionaire CEO standing before him that made Bradley's stomach heave with genuine terror. Gabriel adjusted the cuffs of his pristine white shirt, the black leather gloves on his hands, stark against the dim fluorescent lighting. He did not yell. He did not brandish a weapon. He simply radiated a lethal, terrifying authority that suffocated the space around them. "I am a businessman, Mr. Jenkins," Gabriel began, his baritone voice dangerously calm, echoing off the concrete walls. "And in business, we evaluate assets and liabilities. Penelope is my most valuable asset. You, on the other hand, are a liability. A pathetic, abusive liability who thinks he can put his hands on what belongs to me." I don't know what you're talking about," Bradley stammered, his eyes darting frantically toward the exit ramps. "Penny is my fiancé. She's clumsy. She tripped." In a flash of movement so fast, Bradley barely registered it, Gabriel closed the distance between them. His leather-clad hand clamped around Bradley's throat, pinning him tighter against the pillar. The enforcers stepped back, giving their boss the floor. "If you lie to me again, I will have Dante remove your tongue," Gabriel whispered, leaning in so close that Bradley could smell his expensive sandalwood cologne. "You shoved her into a table. You bruised her skin. You have spent 3 years breaking down a brilliant, beautiful woman because you are a small, insecure, gambling addict who cannot stand to see her outshine you." Gabriel released his grip, stepping back in disgust. He gestured to Tommy, who stepped forward and dropped a heavy black canvas duffel bag at Bradley's feet. The zipper was partially open, revealing thick, banded stacks of $100 bills. "Here is the reality of your situation," Gabriel stated, pacing slowly. "I know exactly who you are, Bradley. I know you owe $45,000 to the Greek syndicates operating out of Greektown. I know you have drained Penelope's savings to cover your disastrous losses on offshore sports betting. You are a drowning man." Gabriel stopped, pointing a leather-clad finger at the duffel bag. Inside that bag is exactly $200,000 in untraceable cash. That is your severance package. You will use it to pay off the Greeks. You will use the rest to disappear. You will pack your belongings tonight. You will leave Chicago, and you will never, ever return to the state of Illinois. Bradley stared at the cash, his greedy eyes widening despite his fear. "And if I don't?" Gabriel's smile was utterly devoid of warmth. "Then tomorrow morning, the Greek syndicates will receive a tip on your exact location. If they don't finish you, my men will. You will be placed in the trunk of a car and driven to a scrapyard in Gary, Indiana, where you will simply cease to exist. But before you vanish, I will make sure you feel every ounce of the pain you inflicted on Penelope." Gabriel pulled a sleek smartphone from his pocket and tossed it onto Bradley's chest. "You have 60 seconds to text her. Tell her you are a coward. Tell her you are leaving her for someone else. Break her heart so she can finally heal. Then you take the bag and you run." Bradley, hands shaking violently, picked up the phone. He didn't hesitate. He typed the message, his thumbs slipping on the glass screen, and hit send. Across the city, high up in a luxury suite at the Drake Hotel, overlooking the sparkling lights of Michigan Avenue, Penny sat on the edge of a plush, king-sized bed. She was dressed in a soft, oversized white bathrobe provided by the hotel. Her injured leg was elevated on a mountain of pillows, wrapped in a soothing ice pack that Gabriel's security detail had brought her. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. From Bradley. "I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I found someone else who isn't a fat burden. Don't look for me. The wedding is off." Penny stared at the glowing screen. She waited for the devastation to hit. She waited for the familiar, crushing weight of rejection and self-loathing to settle over her shoulders. But as she read the cruel words a second time, a strange, bubbling sensation rose in her chest. It wasn't grief. It was an overwhelming, dizzying sense of relief. The heavy oak door to her suite clicked open, and Gabriel walked in. He had shed his suit jacket and tie, looking surprisingly human, yet undeniably powerful. He carried a silver tray, holding 2 crystal glasses and a bottle of expensive Macallan scotch. He saw the tears welling in Penny's eyes, and immediately set the tray down on the mahogany writing desk. "Penelope?" he asked softly, crossing the room to her side. "He left me," Penny whispered, handing Gabriel the phone. "He said he found someone else." Gabriel read the message, his jaw clenching briefly before he handed it back. "The man is a fool. But more importantly, he is gone. You are safe now." Penny looked up at him, her heart pounding. "Why are you doing all of this for me, Mr. DeLuca? I'm just your secretary." Gabriel sat on the edge of the bed, his hazel eyes locking onto hers with a fierce, burning intensity. "You have never been just a secretary to me, Penny. You are the heart of my operation. You are loyal, you are brilliant, and you are entirely blind to your own worth." He reached out, his thumb gently wiping a stray tear from her cheek. "Starting tomorrow, everything changes. You are under my protection. You will never shrink yourself for a man again. You will take up exactly as much space as you deserve, and I will personally destroy anyone who tries to make you feel small." 6 months passed. Chicago transitioned from the bitter cold of winter to the vibrant, blooming warmth of spring, and with the changing seasons, Penelope Russo was entirely reborn. She still worked as Gabriel's executive assistant, but the dynamic had shifted into something far more powerful. She was no longer a timid woman hiding behind her monitors. Armed with a generous raise and an unapologetic sense of self-worth, Penny had overhauled her wardrobe. Gone were the restrictive dark pencil skirts and drab cardigans. In their place were stunning, custom-tailored pieces from Marina Rinaldi on Oak Street, emerald green wrap dresses that hugged her generous curves, bold crimson blazers, and wide-leg trousers that flowed gracefully as she walked. She hadn't lost a single pound, and for the first time in her life, she didn't want to. Gabriel made sure she knew exactly how beautiful she was. Their relationship had evolved into a delicate, magnetic dance. Late nights at the office were spent sharing rich meals, leaning over blueprints for DeLuca Enterprises' expansion, their shoulders brushing, their gazes lingering, just a second too long. Gabriel treated her with a reverent, fierce devotion that left Penny breathless. But ghosts of the past rarely stay buried in Chicago. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Penny was walking back to the DeLuca high-rise after picking up a specific portfolio from their legal team at a nearby firm. As she cut through the quiet, narrow alleyway behind their building, a shadow detached itself from the brick wall. "Well, don't you look expensive?" a raspy, familiar voice sneered. Penny froze. Stepping into the light of the street lamp was Bradley Jenkins. He looked terrible. His clothes were rumpled and unwashed, his face gaunt, and his eyes manic. The $200,000 Gabriel had given him was clearly gone, blown on high-stakes poker tables in Las Vegas and underground casinos in Atlantic City. Desperation oozed from his pores. "Bradley," Penny said, her voice remarkably steady. 6 months ago, she would have cowered. Today she stood tall, clutching the leather portfolio against her chest. "You need to leave. Now! Leave! After the payday I just figured out?" Bradley laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "I did some digging, Penny. Your boss isn't just a CEO. The DeLuca family runs half the ports on the eastern seaboard. Illegal shipping, racketeering, the Mafia, and you're right in the middle of it." Bradley took a threatening step forward. "I want $1 million. You're going to go upstairs, tell your mob boss boyfriend to wire it to my offshore account, or I go to the feds with everything I know about his schedules, his meetings, and you." Penny didn't flinch. She looked at the man who had tormented her for years, the man who had bruised her body and her spirit, and she felt absolutely nothing but pity. "You really are stupid, Bradley," Penny said coldly. "What did you say to me, you fat?" Before the insult could leave his mouth, the heavy metal door to the alleyway violently burst open. Gabriel DeLuca stepped out into the rain, accompanied by Victor and Marco. Gabriel's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated, lethal fury. He didn't even need to give an order. Marco and Victor surged forward, grabbing Bradley by the arms and slamming him face first into the wet brick wall. The sound of a bone crunching echoed in the narrow space as Bradley screamed. "I gave you a chance," Gabriel said, walking slowly toward the pinned man. The rain soaked his expensive suit, but he didn't care. "I gave you money, and I gave you your life. You chose to squander both." "Gabriel, wait," Penny said, stepping forward. Gabriel paused, turning his head to look at her. The rage in his eyes softened for a fraction of a second. "He threatened you, Penny. He knows too much. He is a loose end." "I know," Penny said, her voice hard. She walked up to Bradley, who was sobbing against the bricks. "I just wanted to say goodbye." She looked Bradley dead in the eyes. "You told me I took up too much space. You told me I was a burden. But the truth is, Bradley, I was just too much of a woman for a weak, pathetic boy like you." Penny turned her back on him and walked toward the building. Take out the trash, Gabriel. I have a board meeting to prepare for. Gabriel smiled, a dark, proud, terrifying smile. He nodded to Marco. A black, unmarked transit van pulled into the alleyway. Bradley was dragged, kicking and screaming, into the back of the vehicle. The doors slammed shut, the tires squealed on the wet pavement, and Bradley Jenkins vanished. This time, there would be no duffel bag of cash. There would only be the cold, dark depths of a forgotten scrapyard. Gabriel followed Penny inside, catching up to her in the private, soundproof executive elevator. As the doors slid shut, sealing them in their own private world, Gabriel reached out and hit the emergency stop button. The elevator lurched to a halt between floors. Penny gasped softly as Gabriel crowded her against the wood-paneled wall. He didn't hesitate. He took her face in his hands and brought his lips crashing down onto hers. The kiss was a torrential release of 6 months of pent-up tension. It was fierce, hungry, and deeply possessive. Penny melted into him, wrapping her arms around his broad shoulders, her fingers tangling in his dark hair as he pulled her plush body flush against his hard frame. He worshipped every curve, his hands sliding down to grip her hips with absolute reverence. When they finally broke apart for air, Gabriel rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing heavily. "I love you, Penelope," Gabriel murmured, his thumb stroking her bottom lip. "I love your brilliance. I love your heart. I love every single beautiful curve of your body. Be mine. Rule this empire by my side." Tears of pure joy spilled over Penny's lashes. She was no longer the bruised, limping secretary hiding in the shadows. She was the queen of the DeLuca Empire, and she was exactly where she belonged. "Yes," Penny whispered, pulling him back down for another kiss. "I'm yours." Thank you for watching this thrilling story of power, revenge, and unexpected romance. If you enjoyed seeing Penny rise to the top and find true love with Chicago's most dangerous CEO, please hit that like button. Make sure to share this video with your friends who love mafia romance dramas with highly satisfying twists. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss another incredible real-life story. See you in the next one.